Hello, viewers. We are back with another episode of Healthy India. And today we'll be talking about hypertension, the silent disease. Let me first clarify that when doctors talk about hypertension, they mean high blood pressure. Sometimes in common parlance, people say, I've got hypertension, meaning they're very stressed or they're very tense. That is not synonymous with high blood pressure. The term hypertension in medicine is used to describe high blood pressure. What is blood pressure? Our heart, as you know, pumps blood to various parts of the body through a tree of arteries and vessels. And the pressure that the flowing blood applies on the walls of those arteries, that is our blood pressure. When the heart is contracting, the pressure is maximum. That is the higher reading you get, the systolic blood pressure. When the heart is relaxing, the pressure is minimum. That is the lower reading you get, the diastolic blood pressure. When these readings are high, then we say we've got high blood pressure or hypertension. To discuss various aspects of hypertension today, we have an esteemed panel of experts for you, the best one could ever hope for. We have in the studio with us Professor D. Prabhakaran. Prabhakaran is a well-known cardiologist, but in addition has a solid background in epidemiology. And he works as the Vice President in the Public Health Foundation of India, known for his research in the epidemiology of hypertension, especially in India, and we hope to learn valuable things from him. We have two renowned experts who have joined us on link, and one of them is Professor Gurpreet Wander, who is the Chief of Cardiology at the famous Dayanand Medical College in Ludhiana. Everyone knows, teacher of many cardiologists across the country. And we have Professor S. Venkatram, who's actually professor in the Apollo Institute in Hyderabad, but also holds an attachment for the same sort of qualification, same hypertension area in the University of Texas and in Sydney. So delighted to have you here, gentlemen, and we will now talk about a little bit about hypertension. To start off, we already said what is blood pressure, and high blood pressure is hypertension. But, you know, we are concerned about the prevalence of hypertension, especially in India. And we know that as with other non-communicable disorders like diabetes, which is, of course, my own field, where it's really gone up exponentially in India, we also know that there are a lot of changes in the epidemiology of hypertension and the prevalence of hypertension in India. We know globally it's a common problem. And we also know that 2/3 of those who have hypertension globally are actually in lower and middle income countries. So, Dr. Prabhakaran, what do your studies tell us about hypertension in India per se?
Thank you, Dr. Mittal, for having me here. I just wanted to make the point, you said hypertension is a silent disease, but I want to emphasize the point that hypertension is a silent killer, because it can just come like a thief into your house and who robs away things without you knowing. It just attacks people. So I think the most important thing that we need to know about hypertension is its awareness. So I call hypertension as a disease of three paradoxes, because it's easy to diagnose. All you require is a blood pressure apparatus and measure it. But the awareness is so poor and people don't measure it regularly. There is no opportunistic screening program to measure. Or when you go to a hospital or to a doctor with some illness, they will treat that symptom but not measure the blood pressure. So one important point is to increase the awareness. The second thing is there are multitude of simple drugs and lifestyle modifications that are available, but the treatment rates are extremely poor in India. In fact, if you go to rural areas, it can be as low as 20 to 30% of people with hypertension getting treatment.
So, which means that 70-80% of people in some segments of our population may not actually be getting any treatment. इलाज ही नहीं होता उनका. अगर मालूम है तभी भी इलाज नहीं होता.
Right. तीसरी problem ये है कि that the control rates are even poorer, meaning that people who know that they have hypertension, who are on treatment, they are not treated to targets. We require to get the blood pressure down to less than 140/90 at the least, but most people say get it down to 120/80. But even the higher target is not achieved in more than 10 to 20% of the population, depending on where you are. So there are three paradoxes here: easy to diagnostic rates are poor; easy to treatment rates are poor; easy to control, but the control rates are poor. And that's the big crux of the problem.
So again, that's something like we describe for diabetes all the time, that more than half the people are not diagnosed. And of those who are, even who are diagnosed, don't get proper treatment. And those who do get treatment are not treated to target.
Right.
So similar situation in conditions which are silent, as we say.
Right, I agree with you to some extent, in the sense there is much more awareness compared to hypertension about diabetes. I mean, awareness is there about hypertension, but people think, अरे ठीक है, थोड़ा सा blood pressure बढ़ गया, कोई problem नहीं है.
ऐसे ही बढ़ गया, थोड़ा
ऐसे बढ़ गया, थोड़ा
stress
stress हो गया, बढ़ गया, कोई problem नहीं है. You know, that's the kind of feeling.
Yeah.
But diabetes people are little more worried. Yeah.
So yeah, the prevalence in India.
Yeah, the prevalence in India, if you take, it depends on how you estimate the hypertension prevalence. Community-wide studies in urban and rural areas amongst adults above the age of 20 years gives you a prevalence, like in the urban locations, it's anywhere between 35 to 40%.
35 to 40%.
40%, it's very high. It's
prevalence.
It's one of the highest. In the rural areas, it's still around 20% or so. Overall, we get a prevalence of around 30%, 28 to 30% in India. That's the numbers that we have. But as you grow older, I mean, if you're looking at people above the age of 55 years or so, I would say every other person will have hypertension at that age.
So the prevalence of hypertension in India has increased a lot over the last few decades, and recent data indicates that up to 1/3 of Indians, adult Indians, may be having hypertension, and the prevalence increases as we age. So जैसे जैसे हमारी उम्र बढ़ती है, वैसे आयु बढ़ती है, वैसे ही हमारी ब्लड प्रेशर की संभावना भी बढ़ती जाती है. तो एक हाई प्रोपोर्शन ऑफ केसेस में बढ़ेगा, तो 1/3 एडल्ट पॉपुलेशन तो बहुत ज़्यादा है. तो हमें इसके लिए बहुत चीज़ें करनी चाहिए. लेकिन उसके पहले हम ये समझेंगे डॉक्टर वॉन्डर से. डॉक्टर वॉन्डर, द क्वेश्चन इज़ फॉर यू. ये सब हमने एक बोल दिया, हाई ब्लड प्रेशर, हाइपरटेंशन. इज इट ऑल द सेम, और are there various types? The common variety that we refer to is something in medical parlance we call as essential hypertension. But not all hypertension is essential. Would you like to explain that?
Yes, essential hypertension actually is a misnomer, because 100 years back it was believed that blood pressure is to go up with aging, and that's something which is acceptable. But over a period of time, we have realized that elderly have as much risk of high blood pressure as the young individuals have. Of course, younger people have to live for a longer period of time, but most studies have shown that when we treat hypertension in elderly people, in fact, in younger people before 50 years of age, it is the diastolic, जो नीचे का blood pressure होता है. Blood pressure हमेशा ऊपर का और नीचे का systolic and diastolic. That is how a patient will be told by his doctor. Until 50 years of age, जो नीचे का, the lower blood pressure is more significant, what we call as diastolic hypertension. But after 50-55 years, as our vessels atherosclerosis occurs and arteriosclerosis happens, the systolic blood pressure becomes more important. तो एक तो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है कि दो तरह की सिस्टोलिक हाइपरटेंशन एंड डायस्टोलिक हाइपरटेंशन हम इसको क्लासिफाई करते हैं. परंतु the systolic hypertension of elderly is the one which has assumed greater importance, because today we realize that treating systolic hypertension is a little bit more difficult than diastolic, and it gives us greater benefit in terms of reduction of target organ damage that the hypertension causes. Very aptly, Dr. Prabhakaran and you both were emphasizing that it's a silent disease. Now, essential hypertension is also now called as primary hypertension. Now, largely almost 90% of the hypertension that we see in the community is what you can say essential or primary, or hypertension with no definite cause that you can lay in any particular organ. But there are some risk factors for this high blood pressure, which are there. After all, 30% of the world population has hypertension. So foremost thing is actually genetic factors. People who have parents who are having hypertension, their siblings actually offsprings will have hypertension, brother, sisters having hypertension. So some families, it's a polygenic disease. It's not a single gene disease, but those who have hypertension in the families, उनमें ज़्यादा blood pressure होने का risk रहता है. Obesity is the second very important factor. As we gain weight, risk of high blood pressure increases. Obese people have more hypertension. We have seen in children also. Obese children have higher blood pressures than non-obese. So one very good way of not getting hypertension or avoiding hypertension is to control your body weight. Third important aspect is salt intake. People who take communities which consume more of salt, they have more of this essential or primary hypertension that we say. The fourth important factor is physical inactivity. जो लोग सैर नहीं करते, एक्सरसाइज नहीं करते, उनमें ये ब्लड प्रेशर ज्यादा पाया जाता है. और पांचवा कारण है अल्कोहल है, डाइट में फैट ज्यादा खाना. सो ये 5-6 फैक्टर्स हैं जिसके कारण इसेंशियल हाइपरटेंशन का जो रिस्क है वो बढ़ता है, किसी को होने ही है या नहीं होने. Only 10% of hypertension is what we call in medical terms as secondary hypertension. Now, this secondary hypertension means that there is a definite cause you can lay down in the kidney or in the endocrine system or in the obese people in obstructive sleep apnea, or there are some drugs which are responsible. Now, kidney and high blood pressure has a very definitive interrelationship, one can say. Blood hypertension causes kidney disease, and kidney disease also causes hypertension. So certain kidney diseases could be in the parenchyma, they could be in the vascular system, which can cause high blood pressure. And generally it gets diagnosed on simple blood tests, ultrasound of the kidney. Some endocrine conditions like pheochromocytoma can also cause, but very important factor which is often missed actually in the society is obstructive sleep apnea. जिन लोगों को रात को खराटे बहुत ज्यादा आते हैं, दिन में वो बैठे सोए रहते हैं, जिसको हम obstructive sleep apnea OSA कहते हैं, उनमें देखा गया कि especially nocturnal hypertension is very common. इसके अलावा oral contraceptive pills, sympathomimetic drugs और illicit drugs जैसे yohimbine है, amphetamines है. एक हमारे बड़े सीनियर डॉक्टर अक्सर कहा करते थे, अल्कोहल इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट रिवर्सिबल कॉज ऑफ हाइपरटेंशन, बिकॉज जो लोग ज्यादा अल्कोहल लेते हैं उनमें ब्लड प्रेशर ज्यादा रहता है. तो ये सेकेंडरी हाइपरटेंशन इज बेसिकली about 10% of the total people. 90% people have essential primary, this multi-factors, environmental and genetic that I said, and Dr. Prabhakar highlighted that 1 in 3 people, adults above 30 years of age, have this high blood pressure.
So very important points you made, Dr. Wander, and I think it's crucial for us to remember that the secondary causes, although 10% are still significant, and your doctor may suspect that depending on an unusual age, absence of family history, a very young person getting high blood pressure or episodic blood pressure or sodium potassium abnormalities. So there can be various clues. So don't, always ask your doctor, could there be a secondary cause once? It's a good idea to check out once. So फिर भी 90% ब्लड प्रेशर तो वो प्राइमरी ब्लड प्रेशर या एसेंशियल, जो कि डॉक्टर वॉन्डर ने पॉइंट आउट किया, मिसनोमर है, गलत नाम है, लेकिन चल रहा है, डेकेड से तो चल रहा है. अब मैं डॉक्टर वेंकट राम के पास जाऊंगा. सर, आई एम गोइंग टू आस्क यू, वी हैव टू डिस्कस अ लिटिल बिट अबाउट symptoms. So, in the sense ki we are always saying that, silent disease, silent. So is hypertension always silent? Or can we have symptoms of hypertension? And then if we do, then how do we actually diagnose hypertension?
Thank you, Amrish. Greetings to all of you. One of the difficulties with high blood pressure is that for most people, it really does not cause symptoms for a long period of time. You have high blood pressure, but you're not in good health, but you don't have any symptoms. By the time you develop some symptoms, such as breathing difficulty, swelling of the legs, chest pain, dizziness, tingling, numbness, that means the blood pressure has already caused significant damage to the cardiovascular system. Many people don't take high blood pressure seriously because it is not causing symptoms. like arthritis or asthma or fever, they feel that it will go away. But high blood pressure doesn't go away by itself. It's a myth to think that somehow the blood pressure will disappear because it's a fluke and they have no symptoms. So that is very, very dangerous. Most people who have high blood pressure, they can be diagnosed easily, they can be treated easily before they develop any symptoms of target organ damage, namely damage to the brain, the heart, and the kidney. It's a very easy diagnosis to make, and treatment is very, very, very easy. A lot of people feel that they don't have headache, they don't have nosebleeds, they don't feel giddy, they don't have high blood pressure. But unfortunately, there's no relationship between the blood pressure, nosebleeds, or headache or giddiness. And that is the reason why we have to diagnose high blood pressure anytime you see a healthcare professional. That is the best way to diagnose. And if it is high, then appropriate treatment has to be given so that the blood pressure does not cause damage to important organs in the body.
So very quickly, Dr. Venkatram, before we take a break, what is the diagnostic cutoff? When we measure blood pressure, when do you say someone has hypertension? In general, and we'll come to specific situations later.
Okay, I will. This will make it a little bit more difficult on where to take, when to take. But let me mention to you right now. Anytime the blood pressure that is above 140/90 is clearly high blood pressure. Now the definition has changed quite a bit with the recent guidelines. Any blood pressure greater than 130/80 requires attention and appropriate treatment. It may not be drug treatment, but actually the red signal comes off around 130/80. 130/80 and above, if it keeps going up, it is high blood pressure. But a lot of times you don't make the diagnosis on one visit or immediately. It will require 2 or 3 readings and to make the correct diagnosis. So let me mention to you, the red signal starts at 130/80. And clearly it gets established by the time it is 140/90. So to catch people.
So what Dr. Venkatram is telling us as we take a short break is that 140/90 and above is clearly high blood pressure, but you should get your antennae up even at 130/80. तो अगर आपका ब्लड प्रेशर 140/90 से ज़्यादा है तो आपको ब्लड प्रेशर है, ये 2 बार रिकॉर्ड होना चाहिए. और अगर 130/80 के ऊपर जा रहा है तो भी आपको अपने डॉक्टर से बात करनी चाहिए. We take a short break and we'll back with you soon.
यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानम् अधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्.
I am standing at the spot where Yogeshwara Krishna recited the Bhagavad Gita and taught Dhanurdhara Krishna. You can see the tree behind me.
भगवद गीता जब जिसने भावपूर्वक उसका अध्ययन किया तो अनुवाद करने की आवश्यकता नहीं लगी. अनुवाद स्वतः अंदर से प्रस्फुटित होने लगता है.
भगवद गीता का महात्म्य के बारे में हम जानेंगे, बातचीत करेंगे अंतर्राष्ट्रीय गीता महोत्सव के बारे में. देखिए कार्यक्रम इतिहास गुरुवार रात 9 बजे सिर्फ संसद टीवी पर.
Welcome back, and we'll continue our discussion about high blood pressure or hypertension. Dr. Wanda, we spoke about hypertension producing no symptoms in the majority of cases. Patient is feeling fine. He goes to a doctor, he gets a blood pressure check that is high, and then doctor says, you need to treat. I mean, why should I treat it? If I'm feeling fine, my blood pressure is a little high, reading is a little high, that is something you have checked. Why is it important to treat blood pressure? Why should we control it at all? Supposing somebody says, I don't really care. I'm feeling okay, let me be. What would you say?
That's actually what you have pointed out is the crux of the whole problem with hypertension. The doctor records high reading. The doctor is aware that this person with high readings will be susceptible to cardiovascular disorders, renal disorder, peripheral vascular disease, but patient does not understand. And I think such sessions with the general public are very, very important, because unless we tell the general public, it's a mass disease after all. 1 in 3 individuals have high blood pressure. And unless the general population actually is told that it is an investment that you make for your future if you control your blood pressure to the adequate numbers that have been discussed and that will be discussed. So public education has enormous role to play. As Dr. Amrish, you have also highlighted that patient does not have symptoms. Prabhakar said it's a silent killer. So very important to tell the people that high blood pressure actually is responsible for most of the non-communicable disease consequences that are there. And in fact, hypertension is responsible for 12% of the deaths subsequently. Because it is the major causative factor for cardiovascular disorders. The global burden of diseases actually study was done across the world in 194 countries. And it was started in 1990. And that time, the most important 2 causes of death in Indians were actually diarrheal disorders and respiratory infections. But today, the most common cause of actually death in human beings is coronary artery disease, ischemic heart disease. And 25% of the coronary artery disease is actually caused by hypertension or high blood pressure. Second important, world over, actually the second commonest cause of death is strokes. And 35 to 40% of strokes are caused by high blood pressure. So high blood pressure actually is a forerunner, or it's a risk factor for coronary artery disease or heart attacks that we say. The second is the brain stroke or adrang jo ho jata hai. And the third important factor is renal failure. And the endocrinologists always say that diabetes is the commonest cause of renal failure in the country, but hypertension is the second commonest cause after diabetes. So hypertension can cause, if left untreated in individuals over a period of time, it can cause heart attacks, it can cause abnormal heart rhythms, what we call as atrial fibrillation. It can cause heart failure. Initially, it will cause heart failure with normal ejection fraction, and later it will cause heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. It is a very important risk factor for atherosclerotic disease, whether it is in the heart, in the brain, or in the peripheral vessels. Some heart valves like aortic regurgitation can happen. The large vessel which takes blood from the heart, that is aorta, it can get dilated, it can get dissected. Renal failure, as I said, can happen. So there are multiple, the eyes can get affected, and there are definitive retinal changes that come up if the hypertension is uncontrolled for a long time.
Very true. As we always say, when you're trying to protect your organs from damage, you have to control your blood glucose, you have to control your blood pressure, you have to control your lipids, and you have to control your weight. So addressing just one of these piecemeal will not do the job. They will all help. So you have to address them collectively to maintain better health and save your organs from damage. High blood pressure भी, sugar भी, cholesterol भी, और अपने वजन को भी control में रखना है. Dr. Prabhakaran, we've already spoken about risk factors. Very briefly, if there's anything you want to add, Dr. Wanda has explained beautifully the consequences of hypertension, which are pretty disturbing actually. But how does who are the people who get it? We also have discussed that. What are really the risk factors that propel someone in the direction of high blood pressure?
I think the most important risk factors are rooted in our lifestyle, the diet we consume, the amount of physical activity that we do, and of course some environmental conditions such as air pollution and so on. So the first thing about, I just wanted to point out one of the things which Dr. Wanda mentioned, that there is a one of the important reasons is a genetic cause. Now, I believe that if there is a family history of hypertension, the major reason again is lifestyle, because bad lifestyles cluster in families. If you are having a bad diet, it's not that one individual is having a bad diet, it is the whole family which is having a bad diet. So what are the things that risk factors which have been very well established for hypertension? Number one is high salt intake, which is very clear. Number two is low fruit and vegetable intake. Here, it doesn't mean that we have to get the most expensive, exotic fruits and vegetables. It's just the locally available, homegrown, simple fruits and vegetables. All of them are good. The third thing is alcohol, as rightly pointed out by Dr. Wanda. It's an important factor, and if you are not consuming alcohol, never start drinking. And if you consume alcohol, try and reduce to the least possible. I mean, the recommendation is something like 1 unit. It's like, take it. I mean, I would, as a public health person, I would advise not to take no alcohol.
But if you have to, then maybe 30 ml whiskey or equivalent
something
is
like that.
Sort of
on this platform, I don't want to.
Acceptable, but generally avoided is best.
Generally avoided. In fact, for Indians, it's said that there's no benefit in consuming alcohol. Then physical activity. It's important that we do some physical activity. I know it is difficult. Like, for example, we did a survey of parks in Delhi. There are at least around 20-30% of parks which are unused because they're not clean. They're used by all kinds of, for
animals and
stray animals. So I think we need to create that environment. There's no sidewalks. I come from Gurgaon. There are no sidewalks to walk virtually. So I think those are the kind of things that we do. But even within your regular lifestyle, you can actually break that physical activity. It's important to walk at least half an hour a day for 5 days a week. You can break it up into 3 or 4 parts, 5 minutes, 10 minutes each. That's excellent. There are others which are rooted in policies. We'll come back later and talk what the policy can do in terms of reducing the population level burden of hypertension.
So very quickly, Prabhakaran, about salt. We'll close that just now because salt is the sort of major discussion in hypertension.
Yeah.
What should be an average person's salt intake? What do you recommend? And, if someone has hypertension and just as a normal population.
Right. The recommendation by WHO is 5 grams of salt, which means 1 spoon for the whole day.
1 spoon. एक चम्मच नमक फ्लैट सब कुछ मिला के.
सब कुछ मिला के.
जो खाने में पड़ा, जो सब्जी में मिलाया, सब कुछ मिला के 1 चम्मच, छोटी चम्मच, चाय की चम्मच, बड़ी चम्मच नहीं.
ना बड़ी चम्मच नहीं. बड़ी चम्मच तो 15 ग्राम होता है. तो 1 चम्मच सॉल्ट यूज करना चाहिए. तो तरीका ये है कि जो फूड्स which are rich in salt, like pickles, papad, chivda, ये सब कम मात्रा में खाना है. So that actually takes away a lot of consumption of salt. And don't add salt to when you feel that the salt is low, just try and consume it. Or salad के लिए salt add कर दिया, दही के लिए add कर दिया, ये सब नहीं करना चाहिए.
Great. So very valuable information coming from Dr. Prabhakaran and our experts here. I'll come back to you, Dr. Venkatram. And very briefly, if you can tell us, these days people measure blood pressure at home and they measure it in the clinic. And they always, when they come to us in the clinic, they say, my blood pressure is high here, but it's never been high at home. So what is the story of home versus clinic measurement? Where is that leading us? Which one should we follow when we treat ourselves for our blood pressure, when we're trying to get treated for blood pressure? मेरे घर में तो रीडिंग ठीक आता है और हॉस्पिटल जाता हूँ ज़्यादा आता है. How do you explain that?
Okay, Amrish, ये तो बहुत ये सवाल very common है. The blood. Let me comment first on the blood pressure measurements at home. There are more and more recommendations for home blood pressure measurement, which should probably be advanced further. One difficulty with home blood pressure measurement is there is no proper, complete acceptance of one way of taking the blood pressure at home with one device which is reproducible and predictable. I think home blood pressure should be encouraged, but I don't think we are at a stage now at this time where you make important decisions based upon the home blood pressure readings. For example, if you ask Amrish, your own colleagues, when is the last time they started the treatment on their patients on home blood pressure, they will not be able to recollect. If you ask your colleagues, when is the last time when they discontinued or reduced the dosage based upon the home blood pressure measurements, they will not be able to recall because that does not happen at the present time. I think the home blood pressure measurements are a reasonable guide to go to the next step of confirmation. But it has not reached the level where you accept the home blood pressure measurement to be the standard for treatment and for monitoring. I think there are different ways of taking home blood pressure measurement, which are into, and I think the standardization is improving. But I don't think we have come to the level where it's not like a weighing scale or a thermometer reading at home. We have not come to that, and it definitely has not come to even blood sugar like hemoglobin, because the blood pressure fluctuates. I think my personal view is, I think the home blood pressure technology and science has to be advanced, but the decisions to make the diagnosis and to treat to the goal based on the home readings is far, far away from the reality at the present time.
Thank you.
I think it should be still there on the radar.
Yeah.
The best way right now, it could be complementary, but not a substitute for conventional measure of blood pressure in the office, clinic, wherever it is. And all the major guidelines recommend automated office blood pressure measurements. In other words, the patient might be sitting in front of you, as it happens in my clinic. We measure the blood pressure with an automatic device, although the patient is sitting in front of me. I think that many of the automated office blood pressure devices are standardized, they're accepted, and some give average of 2, some give average of 3. Either one is fine. I think the best way right now is office-based automated blood pressure.
Fantastic, sir. Thank you.
As the
Thank
way
you
to
for that.
diagnose hypertension properly.
Very important messaging, and we faced this during the pandemic when we were managing people with COVID and diabetes at home, people not able to access us. In our patients of endocrinology and diabetes, it was much easier to get information about their blood glucose, which they could check on the glucometer and report to us, and much harder to get accurate information about blood pressure. We'll take a short break and be back for the third and final segment.
Seaports are an integral link between trading countries. As ports become more modernized and efficient, the cost of exporting and importing goods gets sharply reduced. And this leads to lower cost for consumers.
We have enacted a legislation for declaring 111 waterways.
The government launched the Maritime India Vision 2030 at the Maritime India Summit in March 2021. This is a 10-year blueprint to create world-class ports, waterways, and make India Atmanirbhar in shipping.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion with our experts on high blood pressure. Before we go ahead, Dr. Prabhakaran, you know how Dr. Venkatraman has very clearly emphasized the importance of automated office measurements as the gold standard for measuring blood pressure. But we are all aware, and he was discussing that partially, that in hospital, in office, what a blood pressure we record, even if it's automated, as Dr. Venkatram said, we can have falsely high readings or sporadically high readings, something we call as white coat hypertension. In one line, can you explain that?
So, to explain white coat hypertension in one line is that your blood pressure is high whenever you get it measured in a clinic or by a doctor. But when you get it measured at home or by some other healthcare provider at your home circumstances, it's normal. So this is called white coat hypertension. And it's a condition that we should not, while we may not treat it, it should not be ignored because it has also been shown to have high risk in the future.
Forerunner of sustained hypertension.
Sustained hypertension as well as complications.
So even if you're getting high blood pressure in the clinic, as explained by Dr. Venkatram and Dr. Prabhakaran, even if you're getting a high blood pressure in the clinic alone and quite clearly, accurately measured home readings are normal, even that is a harbinger of future high blood pressure. So please be careful if you fall in that zone. Don't just dismiss it by saying, मेरा तो सिर्फ यहाँ बढ़ जाता है, वैसे हमेशा ठीक रहता है. अगर ऐसा भी है, तो भी आपको थोड़ा ख्याल रखना पड़ेगा, अपने डॉक्टर से सलाह मशवरा ज़रूर करें. Dr. Wonder, there have been numerous advances in recording blood pressure, and like in diabetes, again, I keep going back to diabetes because that's my home ground. There is a lot of emphasis on continuous monitoring. You want to say something about blood pressure and continuous monitoring? Dr. Wonder, please.
Coming to blood pressure measurement, actually, the mercury sphygmomanometer in the office was the age-old traditional measuring device, actually, which we have used. And most of the Scandinavian countries actually dropped the use of mercury sphygmomanometer apparatus 15 years back. And India is a signatory to the Minamata Convention, understanding which the WHO has taken upon itself, that we will be dispensing with the mercury sphygmomanometers. By sphygmomanometer, we mean the blood pressure recording apparatus is called as a sphygmomanometer for the lay public. So we have to actually get away from the use of mercury sphygmomanometers for the simple fact that mercury is an ecotoxic agent, and its usage in thermometers and in blood pressure apparatuses has to be stopped over a period of time because it is a cumulative heavy metal. And it gets consumed by the fish. And there have been actually down south in India, in Kodaikanal and in Minamata itself in Japan, there have been multiple brain disorders. So that is one aspect. So we are left now, actually, what we need to use is the aneroid, the large dial aneroid sphygmomanometer, or the classical oscillometric digital sphygmomanometer, which should be used in the office. The oscillometric digital sphygmomanometers have to be validated, and they need to be, of course, calibrated from time to time. But as you and Dr. Prabhakaran pointed out, white coat hypertension is a definitive entity. And Dr. Venkatram was also emphasizing that home blood pressure has actually come into the domain of now. A lot of patients come to the hospital and tell us, "Hey, ji, meri blood pressure theek thi, mere doctor ne meri dawai band kar di." Now, we really, as experts, we all appeal actually to the people that once blood pressure fluctuates by about 20 to 30 millimeters of mercury systolic and 15 to 20 millimeters of mercury diastolic. In fact, one of my teachers used to say anything that is fluctuating is alive, and what is not fluctuating, what is static, is actually non-alive or dead. So fluctuation is a sign of life. And if the blood pressure is fluctuating between 110 to 140, that's a very good fluctuation. But if the blood pressure is fluctuating between 130 to 160, that certainly is a high fluctuating range, and that person needs blood pressure control. So my appeal to the public is, don't be worried of fluctuation. Home readings will be 5 to 10 millimeters lower than the office readings. That's why the diagnosis of hypertension in the office is made, what you initially said, Dr. Ambrish, 140/90. But the home blood pressure criteria for making a hypertension diagnosis is 135/85. and an average of 7-day readings have to be taken by the person. The first reading, in fact, has to be discarded. One has to take 2 to 3 readings. And the average of these readings, actually, what we are trying to look at by measuring blood pressure is not one episodic recording. We want to know what is the blood pressure of an individual during most awake or sleep hours. And the sleep hour blood pressure, as you have pointed out, can only be judged by the ambulatory blood pressure recording, which, as Dr. Venkatram very rightly said, is expensive. Possibly not the way in our country to go, because affluent people, those who can afford, certainly some segment of hypertension patients who are not responding to treatment, who are having obstructive sleep apnea, who have a resistant type of a hypertension, they certainly will need ambulatory, or if there is a wide kind of variation patients, there is also an entity of masked hypertension, just as there is white coat hypertension. It is opposite of white coat hypertension. People have high blood pressures at home, but when they come to the office, their blood pressures are normal. This is called as masked hypertension, and about 5 to 10% people have masked hypertension. Then there are some people who do not drop their blood pressures in night, what is called as non-dippers. That can be judged on an ambulatory blood pressure recording. So we are not advocating ambulatory blood pressure recording for the masses. Only very selected
patients,
individuals should actually use or get an ambulatory blood pressure recording.
Okay.
Most of the people, the blood pressure oscillometric device in the office of a doctor, after coming to the office, the person should be resting for time, 5 to 10 minutes. First reading should be discarded. No coffee or tea before that. No anxiety or stress. Urine should have been passed. So all these things make a little bit of a difference to the blood pressure recording reading that we get. And then, as was pointed out earlier, if you have an ambulatory, have an automatic office blood pressure recording where the white coat effect can be avoided, that is even better. But those machines are a little bit expensive.
And not for
so
everybody.
I would summarize by saying that home blood pressure readings with the multiple home blood pressure readings says 14, an average of 14 readings, which the doctor interprets and not get interpreted by the patient itself, and a properly recorded office blood pressure. A cumulative effect is made by the primary care physician of an individual, the GP, and then that person can actually, it's very hard for a patient to actually act on the basis of single reading. And in fact, we request you not to do that actually as general public, but depend upon your general physician to make those decisions as to the drugs need to be escalated or down.
So we are sort of running out of time. We have time for one last question from each one of our experts, and we request you to be brief so that we can finish on time. We have a question for Dr. Venkatram. You know, sometimes people don't want to start medication. They say, it's just one reading or whatever, and I don't believe, I feel fine. Should people be scared of BP medication, or should they start it when advised? And the second is, when the blood pressure becomes normal, should they just stop it? Because that's another question we face with diabetes also, with cholesterol also, with blood pressure. Now my blood pressure is fine. Why should I continue medication? That's the question.
Amrish, this is an important question for the community. More than the BP medicine, we always emphasize BP control. BP control, however you do it, it does not matter. Lifestyle changes, yoga, exercise, diet, all kinds of things other than proven remedies. So emphasize blood pressure control.
Yes.
And
so with or
most
without
of the
medicine.
people requiring blood pressure control end up on requiring blood pressure medicines. There's nothing wrong in taking blood pressure medicines because they were discovered with the aim of reducing the blood pressure. And all the trials have shown that blood pressure reduction with drug therapy is very, very helpful. I generally don't worry about the cost of blood pressure medications because the cost of heart disease is very high. The cost of angioplasty is high. The cost of heart failure is high. The cost of transplantation of heart is high. The cost of kidney failure is high. Dialysis is high. Kidney transplantation is high. Stroke is high. Rehabilitation is high. and you lose the job, and the cost is very, very high. Compared to complications of high blood pressure, the cost of treating high blood pressure is minuscule. In fact, it has been computed that medicines only account for 10% of the healthcare costs. I'm not promoting that we need to use more medications, but we need to use medications or whatever it takes to bring the blood pressure down. And the adverse effects that people read in the Google or hear from the relatives are very, very unusual adverse effects.
So
that
I
occur
think
from blood
the
pressure
message
medication.
you are
It
communicating,
can.
sir. Yes, sir.
That's not the reason not to take medications.
blood pressure, yeah.
It is very important to control the blood pressure. If it requires blood pressure medication, so be it. And we have to learn, Amrish, an important lesson from our friends in oncology. When they treat a patient with cancer, they treat aggressively to the goal, and they try not to compromise the goal. You can try to change the treatment, but they never compromise the goal of putting the patient into cure or remission. So people who treat high blood pressure should have the same mentality as an oncologist
So-
and
so
treat
basically,
high blood
sir,
pressure
yeah,
as
thank
a
you. I think-
malignancy of the
I think-
cardiovascular system that has to be treated properly so that it don't recur and it does not cause metastasis to the brain, to the heart, or the kidney.
So I think your point is very well taken that we do need to treat blood pressure properly, control blood pressure. If it can be controlled with non-pharmacologic measures, non-drug measures, so be it, fantastic. If drugs are indicated, if medication is indicated and advised by a physician, please do take it, keep your blood pressure at target, and do not stop the medication if the blood pressure becomes normal. तो अगर आपका blood pressure normal हो गया है दवाई के साथ, तो दवा बंद नहीं करनी है, डॉक्टर से बात करनी पड़ेगी. अगर आपको लगता है कि बहुत लो ब्लड प्रेशर हो रहा है तो डॉक्टर से डिस्कस करें. अपने आप ब्लड प्रेशर नॉर्मल होने पे दवाई नहीं रोकी जाती है. हमारे पास वक्त बहुत ही कम है. एक लाइन में डॉक्टर वॉन्डर्स, अलग अलग लोग के लिए अलग टारगेट्स होते हैं, सबके लिए सेम टारगेट तो नहीं होता. तो एक बार जल्दी से गिना दें कि किन लोग के टारगेट्स फर्क होते हैं ब्लड प्रेशर में, डिफरेंट टारगेट्स फॉर डिफरेंट ग्रुप्स.
जैसे आपने खुद ही कहा, यंगर इंडिविजुअल्स के लिए ब्लड प्रेशर टारगेट्स ज्यादा रहते हैं, ज्यादा स्ट्रिंजेंट रहते हैं. और पीछे एक स्प्रिंट ट्रायल आया जिसने एक चाइनीज ट्रायल भी आया है पीछे, स्टेप अप स्टडी. दोनों ने दिखाया है कि अगर हम लोअर टारगेट से क्लोज टू 130/80, between 120 to 130 systolic and 70 to 80 diastolic अगर यंगर इंडिविजुअल्स में अचीव करने की कोशिश करें और उसको लॉन्ग टर्म रखें, तो उससे ये कॉम्प्लिकेशंस जो हैं ये कम हो जाती है. फॉर एल्डरली पीपल हु कैन नॉट टॉलरेट वेरी लो ब्लड प्रेशर्स, वी हैव टू कंसिडर द एज ऑफ द पर्सन, द फ्रेलिटी लेवल, द फिजिकल एक्टिविटी लेवल, एंड इन एल्डरली पीपल वी कैन इवन बी कॉम्प्लिसेंट विद 130 to 40 systolic and 80 to 90 diastolic. So it will depend upon, there is a J-shaped curve, and we never try to reduce the blood pressure below 120/70 because it's unlike the lipids where we say the lower the better.
Yeah.
Here there is a range in which we want to bring the blood pressure more stringent in younger individuals, little bit less stringent, and look at the tolerance. After all, we don't want to make people feel worse. We want to see the right numbers, but it should never be at the cost of making. So postural fall in blood pressure, all these aspects we have to keep in mind and see what low, within the range that we advise, how much we can achieve in our patients. And as you rightly said, it's a commitment for the life. Mostly there is no cure for hypertension and diabetes and lipids, and most of these people will need lifelong treatment. There will be some variation. In winters it has to be increased, in summers we have to down-regulate the therapy.
Thank you. Thank you. And the very last comment from Dr. Prabhakaran, any general comment, and what is our public health approach as a country which is seeing such a rise in patients of high blood pressure, rise in numbers? What should be our public health approach to address this issue?
Right. The public health approach to address hypertension is, there are many things that can be done, but because of the shortage of time, I'm going to focus on very few things. Number one, I think processed foods are high in salt, so there needs to be a regulation of processed foods. That's
Processed foods are important to avoid because they intrinsically are high in salt.
High in salt, that's number one. Number two is alcohol regulation is required, and we as a general public, as well as the policy, we have to focus on reducing the alcohol intake in the country. It's actually rising. So that's the
So
second.
alcohol goes down, salt goes down, alcohol goes down. Processed foods are rich in salt, they go down.
The third is the fruit and vegetable. Unfortunately, there is 50% loss of fruits and vegetables during transport. So I think we require policy measures to encourage local growth of fruits and vegetables and high consumption of fruits and vegetables, which has been our natural food. And last thing in terms of diet is to have foods, the traditional foods such as millets, for
Yes.
example, high fiber foods.
Yes.
So those all are useful in reducing the blood pressure. So we need to do that. And physical activity or yoga or both is extremely important, and make it as a part of your life. Put in at least half an hour to 1 hour every day and try and get that much of time to do that physical activity. I think these simple, don't get daunted by hypertension. It's a simple problem which can be treated by very simple techniques. Make it as a part of your lifestyle. That's my core message.
So the important point that Dr. Prabhakaran is mentioning is that it's all the same for preventing heart disease, for reducing diabetes. So it's not that you have to take a different diet for every organ. It's the same diet that we
Yes,
advocate
exactly.
for general health. That will also work for blood pressure. And one important point is that locally grown fruits and vegetables have to be encouraged. India, many people are vegetarian, yet our fruit and vegetable intake is way below what it should be. So more focus on locally growing fruits and vegetables, grown in a healthy way, washed in a healthy way, consumed in a healthy way, will help us in the long run, not just for blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, fatty liver, everything. Thank you very much, all my friends, colleagues, and viewers, for this very interesting discussion on high blood pressure.